The Philadelphia Eagles are very lucky. They have a 9th straight win. 22-16 is the victory over the Carolina Panthers. The Locked On Eagles postgame show coming your way.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, Eagles fans? Welcome into the Locked On Eagles post-game show. We are brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code in all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. I'm Louis DiBiase, joined as always by Gino Camilleri. Thanks for making us your first listen and watch each and every day. The Eagles are now 11-2, a nail-biting, lucky, anxiety-inducing 22-16 win over the Carolina Panthers. Makes it 9 straight wins, though, which is tied for the longest winning streak in franchise history. Saquon Barkley breaks LeSean McCoy's rushing record today. Some clutch play from Darius Slay and others in the fourth quarter. But, Gino, overall, this was a trap game in its purest definition, right? You're coming off 3 massive wins against good teams, the Washington Commanders, the LA Rams, the Baltimore Ravens. Carolina Panthers are a 3-9, kind of dead-in-the-water football team, and yet you had to survive, I thought, one of Jalen Hurts' worst performances of the season. Nick Sirianni being a coward in the fourth quarter. A rare bad game from some defensive players that have been studs. Kellen Moore in the passing game continue to be inconsistent. Even Xavier Legette, dropping that ball on the final drive. They really did get lucky today that they aren't looking at a very 2018-2023 loss against a bad team, that they just played with their food and kept them in the game the whole time.
If you look at the NFL in terms of 3-game windows, and I think right now is the perfect time to look at it. And if you go back to Thursday's episode where I was joined by Julian Council, he said that with Carolina playing as good as they did in the last 4 games, that they were going to be troublesome. And then I said, if there was ever a game on the schedule, Lou, where you're coming off a game where you just dominated Baltimore to an extent, you know that you have the tough Pittsburgh Steelers in a home game next week.
Sure.
If there was ever one game that by the letter of the law is a trap game, and look at the history. Jimmy Kempski did a great article during the week of when the Eagles are greater than 10-point favorites in games. If you don't know the Joe Webb game, go back and watch that.
Don't do that to me.
The Eagles are so disappointing.
Gino, this game stressed me out enough. Don't be bringing up Joe Webb.
No, but the one thing I will say, Lou, unlike the games down the stretch, unlike the Joe Webb game, unlike the games in 2018 where the Carolina game, did you not get some goosebumps when they converted that
The Titans game is what I thought of, too.
Dude,
the 4th and 12 with Marcus Mariota, Bryce Young in the end zone.
They mirrored
shakes Josh
each other.
Sweat. Unbelievable.
But this Eagles team, even though Jalen Hurts didn't play perfect, still finished the day, though, with a 110 passer rating according to Next Gen Stats, which I find hard to believe.
I do, too.
They won the turnover battle. Saquon Barkley is the engine. He is the MVP, I think, through and through, if you are looking at this team. And unless Josh Allen falls off a cliff, I think Josh is going to win it. But Saquon's going to win. Oh, boy.
Sure. Yeah.
He's going to win Offensive Player of the Year. The defense had a weird game. There were some lucky things for Carolina, too. Jalen Carter gets a tip pass in the red zone, and it falls right to the hands of Adam Thielen. Even though the penalties were 7-7, there were some calls that were, egregious, I think, on both sides that were missed, like that face mask penalty to Grant Calcaterra that was uncalled.
Yeah.
But the Eagles, unlike last year down the stretch, won this game. And to go to 9 straight, you continue this winning streak, you keep pace with Detroit, and now you know what the floor is. This is the floor game. We can never get back to this point. And I think this team, how they have responded, I think the bye week was a great representation of that, is that when they do hit these little bumps in the road, we always said, how are they going to answer to adversity post-2023? I think they've done an excellent job. And I know a lot of people are going to be a lot more negative on the outcome of this game, but you won it against a scrappy team that had nothing to lose, man. That's
Bryce Young's good,
already
man.
dead. Bryce Young,
I think Bryce Young's a legitimate player.
Some impressive ball. Legette drops that ball at the end.
That was a great play. And the scramble, too.
44 seconds left. You had 2 timeouts. I would have liked to see what Jalen Hurts could do there, but I think maybe the biggest concern for me was the mentality to punt on that last drive, because it's like, okay, it's 4th and 8, a little bit long, but Saquon's going at 7 yards a clip. Jalen has made enough big throws and had some big runs with his legs. Even though Jake has been bad, I know you weren't going to go that route, but the defense wasn't great all game. Yes, they did have a great stop at the end, but playing not to lose, that was one of the things.
It was
where
a coward
okay,
move.
that's got to be a one and done for the season.
They should have either went for it or went for the field goal, even with Jake Elliott's struggles.
Put yourself in position to either score that touchdown,
to give them the ball back,
or give Jake the biggest confidence boost maybe of the season, and he makes that.
I kind of get it. I mean, Jake Elliott 0 for 5 with 50-plus yard field goals. Like, he's
maybe
a
Nick was
right
in the
now,
beginning of the year to go for it on some of those situations.
Yeah, maybe he was. And I totally agree with a lot of the positive things you said. And, like, it is a typical trap game. And they've played some exhausting football games against good teams. They got another one coming up. And that's why, for that reason, I'll let like the defensive performance go. I thought Cooper DeJean today like really struggled against Adam Thielen. I don't think he tackled very well, which is uncharacteristic. Like the pass rush could not finish and get Bryce Young on the ground. Like, yeah, those things like I will kind of let go, and I think Sirianni's been a lot better with his end game decisions over the last few months. But the one thing that I don't want to use the trap game excuse for is the inconsistencies in the passing game, especially early on. Like, this is a real problem that's going to hurt them eventually. And you can disagree that me saying, sure, the Panthers, like, you can get by against Carolina doing that, but not against other teams. You might say, well, they did it against Baltimore this way, LA, Washington, sure. But eventually, as the games get more important, as the playoffs come by, and you're in these games that are very close and down to the wire, that really bad quarter where you look like the worst football team in the league eventually is going to be the difference. Like, I'm really nervous this could kill them. And I don't know if it's tempo they need to use, what Kellen Moore has to do to get Jalen Hurts going early. And it's not just Jalen's fault, but he looked like he was sleepwalking through a lot of this game and just was playing scared and indecisive. And again, Kellen Moore's got to do a better job of, he's such a rhythmic passer and a momentum player that they got to get him going earlier. Sure, yes, Saquon Barkley needs to be the engine. Like, as you said, he's probably the MVP favorite right now after this game, breaking McCoy's record. But I do think a focus of the first few drives in these games moving forward, you got to get Jalen's confidence going quickly. And I think the game manager conservative approach and efficient ball has really helped this team. But at the same time, I feel like today it almost hurt him in a way because he was afraid to make a mistake and he wasn't being aggressive when you have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. So I think, I don't want to say it's getting in his head, but I think he took it a little bit too far today where he wasn't playing safe and smart. He was playing skittish in a way until the fourth quarter. And that's something Kellen Moore needs to help him with.
I thought Kellen Moore did a pretty good job, to be honest with you. I think the first drive was
I think the rest of the way. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the bit of just being the worst team on the first 2 drives is insane. Like, the best Saturday Night Live writers in the 80s.
What are they talking about in meetings? Like, what is the focus? Is it just like, let's figure out what the defense is doing? Like, it can't just be a scouting report for the first 2 drives.
It can't.
You can't do that.
I think the thing that really was like, hey, let's just lean into this right away was seeing Saquon Barkley rip off that early run, and then they go pass, and then you're off the football field. Jalen Hurts, he's confident enough because of what he does in the fourth quarters. Like, I don't think he needs like a booster seat to get going in games. I don't think
confidence-wise, but he's a rhythm player, though. I think passing-wise, he's got to get those completions under his belt early to get moving, I think.
And the one thing they need to do is put an emphasis on just putting the ball in the hands of your really good football players. The thing that was concerning to me was there's some moments, and I think you could see AJ and Devontae on the sideline kind of discussing it, where these guys got a half step or a step on an inside breaking route. Why are we delaying these throws, Jalen? Like, these are tempo rhythm throws. We just got to get this thing on the money. At the same time, seeing this sample set over this course of the season, I would say this has to be an outlier game. Like, for the tempo, for the rhythm of the passing game, because we know that it can get going, and we see these really good stretches. They have some really money drives where they're just putting together Great calls. Kellen Moore gets Kenny Gainwell on that fly sweep where they pull the couple offensive linemen across the line. You already got the 3 guys out wide. Like, great play call. Then you're just throw A.J. Brown a slant. Throw him a slant again. That's pretty easy stuff. Hit Devontae Smith out wide.
And then they go 3 drives in a row where they just don't know how to get them the ball. And
at all.
It's so frustrating and we've said this so many times in the podcast, but there is no reason this passing game should be this inconsistent. And sure, Jalen Hurts 5 years in, he kind of is who he is. And I think there are going to be some inconsistencies with this passing game, but not to this degree when you have this kind of talent in every level. And I think you made a great point of Saquon was killing it early, stick to the run game, but it's also a little frustrating that you have to feel like the passing game against the Carolina Panthers can't be a reason you're winning. I mean, that's sure, keep doing what's working, but the passing game should be working. That's the frustrating part. And they know it. And that's why they're stubborn on committing to it at times, because they're trying to get it to work.
You're stuck in a situation where the run game it's the toast, it's the peanut butter, it's the jelly. It's everything. And you don't want to make excuses to say that you can't operate against the Carolina Panthers. But to just not lean into your fastball, I think is asinine.
But you got to have the changeup at some point. Me and you have made this take all the time on this podcast this year. At times, but not
passing
consistently
touchdowns
enough.
Today, man.
I know, but it wasn't consistent enough, and anybody that watched that game knows it. And me and you have said, sure, be a run-first team as long as it's not in spite of the passing game. But, today I think a lot of it was in spite of the passing game.
It definitely was, and
he was clutch, though. I think Jalen was clutch.
I'm going to say it's a one-off. They made enough plays in the end to get it done. I think one of the really disappointing things was probably the defensive performance in terms of getting Bryce Young to the ground. There were a lot of spots where you could have gotten off the football field, and maybe that game could have been a little bit different in terms of taking over games and just being able to put the nail in the coffin if the defense was able to get off the field. But there wasn't enough complementary football played throughout this game. But remember, in the context of where they are in the season, what is to come, what is next week? I think a lot of these guys were already saying we're ready to play Pittsburgh. They were on to Pittsburgh in their mind, but this game is not won on paper, guys. Like you said, you got very lucky to come out of this game with a win.
Yeah,
but you didn't come out of those games last year. Seattle, Arizona, down the stretch against lesser teams. You lost those games, and that ended up biting you in the rear end when you don't win the division. You won this game today, 9 straight. On to Pittsburgh. Got to continue to talk about what went right, what went wrong, though.
Yeah, I got to say before we take a break, I got to see one more or two more passing performances, though, like we saw against Cincinnati, even against Jacksonville. I got to see that to really feel like if the Eagles have to throw the football in a game. And with Saquon Barkley, it looks like you may never have to, but you've got to have that counter. And I need to just the confidence. There's been games this year against the Ravens even and the Rams where, they weren't struggling to pass. They just really weren't trying much because the run game was working so well. But because there's so many of those kind of games and then some of these inconsistent ones, I just haven't seen enough of those dominant performances to really feel fully confident. So I do think at some point in the regular season before the postseason, I would like to see that to feel okay, yeah, I'm not as nervous about this as I was.
I've seen enough. I believe
Have you?
it.
Has there been enough games this year for you to feel confident in the passing game?
If Jalen's, what I've been saying since the bye week, and especially of the last couple weeks, Jalen has to play within the context of this offense. I thought there were moments where the entire team wasn't playing well. And I don't think to pinpoint it just on Jalen Hurts.
No, I'm not saying, I'm saying the passing game as a whole.
As a whole?
I don't think it's been good enough this year.
9 wins in a row, man. The results speak for themselves.
I think you're overlooking it. I think you're overlooking it a little bit.
You can't overlook something that is not even a problem right now.
You don't think the passing game is a problem? I'm not saying
it's a concern. It's a concern, but you still have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith who at moments when they have to go and dominate. Dude,
they had 40 and 37 yards today against the worst defense in the league.
Yeah, and Saquon Barkley against the worst
I'm not saying the run
attack.
game's not good, but the passing attack should be able to produce against that.
We don't need to come on here every week and say like the passing game needs to be better. It needs to be better.
I think
because
we do
they're
need
winning
to do that. Until they fix it, you do need to say that.
But
just because they're winning football games doesn't mean you never talk about their issues.
I'm not saying that it's not an issue, but we can't keep saying that this is the thing that's going to prevent them from going to the nth degree because they've won against the best teams.
Should we not talk about the first quarter struggles either because it hasn't hurt them yet? In 2023, they were 10-1, and those problems hold on. In 2023, those problems had yet to hurt them, and then it did, and they collapsed. I'm trying to learn from that and say a win's a win, but eventually you knew that could hurt them in the end.
I think the first quarter is more of a concern than the passing game.
But the main first quarter problem is the passing game. The run game was working in the first quarter.
But to get out of a rhythm and take away the run, that's the problem.
But they're trying to fix one half of their offense, and I think like eventually you got to do it. But I don't know. I mean, I think eventually that could hurt him. It hasn't yet, but I'm probably a little bit more concerned than you are for sure.
Yeah, I would say that. I believe in Jalen and this team to get it going. I think this game in a vacuum, it definitely wasn't perfect. It's not what you want to see for the Philadelphia Eagles. But in the grand scheme of things, what did they do in the second quarter? Dominated like they have done all season long. What did they do in the fourth quarter? Made enough plays to win these games when they had to. What did they do when the offense wasn't going great in the passing game? They ran the ball exceptionally well. What did they do when the front wasn't making plays? Well, they picked it off on the back end. There were enough moments and enough good things where they took care of the ball, didn't shoot themselves in the foot that much today, and they won this game. You have to look at it beyond just today, in my opinion.
22-16, the final score. The Eagles are now 11-2. We'll continue to recap the game coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles postgame. This episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by Hillsdale College. Time is our most precious commodity, so don't waste it scrolling through the same mind-numbing content for hours and hours. How can you spend it wisely to improve yourself? Our sponsor, Hillsdale College, they're offering more than 40 free online courses, including Constitution 101, Introduction to Free Market Economics, The Great American Story, The Rise and Fall of the Roman Republic, and so much more. All of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced so that you can start whenever and tune in wherever. Plus, you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, discussions, or just enjoy the lectures. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register. hillsdale.edu/lockedon.
This 9th straight win is also brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. If you love watching the games, you're going to love Prize Picks. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy. Whether it's football, basketball, or any of your favorite sports, Prize Picks makes your holidays bigger and brighter. You can now win up to 200 times your money on Prize Picks. Plus, this holiday season, they're giving away to their $30 million in rewards to the masses for Pickmas and are offering 2 free picks in December. When your pick hits, Prize Picks will make it easy to cash out. You can get your money in as fast as 15 minutes. And if you're watching the games this week and you want to get in on the action for Sunday Night Football, Monday night, there's only one place that we're going to send you. It is Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 instantly when you play just $5. Prize Picks, run your game.
All right, it's the Locked On Eagles postgame show, 22-16, the final score. The Eagles hold on for dear life over the Carolina Panthers. 9 straight wins, tied for a franchise record with that 2017 Super Bowl team and a few other in franchise history. And yeah, again, as we mentioned in segment 1, like they got to fix a lot of the same issues that have been hurting them this year. But at the same time, one thing I will say, Gino, Jalen Hurts today, a positive, he is extremely clutch. Like I think the sliding and taking that delay of game, the final drive, like that was a little concerning. But
and those got to be coached up. Like that's a whole concern, like for the unit.
But I will say he normally doesn't make those mistakes, so I'm not super concerned about that. I will say like there were a lot of 3rd and long situations today where he used his legs to convert the first down, whether he was running or passing across his body. That's one thing about Jalen this year that he's done really well is those off-script plays. Like he's cooking teams. And I thought that is what kind of put the Eagles offense back into the football game outside of Saquon's record-breaking day. I did think Jalen did bounce back pretty well, as he does. He doesn't let things snowball, even in a game that was maybe one of his worst and most indecisive of the season. He's still like, he might be the worst first quarter quarterback in the league right now, but he's the best fourth quarter quarterback.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought he was great in the second half.
When you're scouting players and you go to the cut-ups of guys, and you can do this on NFL Pro, you could pull up their third and fourth down highlights, and those are what is known as money downs. Jalen Hurts, no pun intended, is cash on money downs.
Yeah.
And that's why you pay this guy the money that you paid him, because of what he does in those situations when you need to have a Harry Houdini play, when two guys are hanging onto his legs and he escapes the pocket and has his longest run since the 2022 season. I believe it was the second longest of his career. And the throw when he's going to his left, and the torque and the velocity he's able to create moving across the grain to find his target. Lou, I think in structure, the passing game is concerning, because those are the things that you're practicing.
Good way to frame it.
Monday through Saturday, right? Like, those are the things where we should be ahead of the ball. We know where our matchup is. If we got 4 over 3, we're going to check out of that.
Mm-hmm.
All the things that you're looking at from an OC perspective. Out of structure, there's nobody better in the league, maybe Josh Allen right now, at creating plays out of structure.
His EPA right now is number 1 in the league when it comes to outside of structure runs and even design runs, Gino. And I think that doesn't even show the passing numbers on the run. Mm-hmm. So I do agree with that. That's probably a good way to frame it, is the schemed, like, within the confines of the offense passing game is bad. But the off-script improv, like that has helped this team, like, really score points and move the ball.
And I even thought in the red zone when they had that Grant Calcaterra touchdown, that's Jalen's third or fourth read in the progression, because you have the 2 quick in-breakers from Devontae and AJ. Those are clearly the 2 reads. He's sitting in the pocket, going through his progression. That's good stuff. Like, there's enough good stuff to pick and pull from this game where it's like, yeah, in structure, we can build on some of these things. Out of the pocket, though, you cannot give this guy time. Lou, running the football, he's getting to the edge. He is beating guys to the edge. That draw read is the most effective play in their playbook, man. When he is making that edge defender have to be in conflict, and you either have to go with Saquon through the A or B gap, or you got to go with Jalen on the pull. They've been exceptional at doing that. The run game is really good. And maybe it's because Jeff Stoutland is your run game coordinator and he's able to, like, know exactly where guys are going to be. Maybe he needs to step into the pass game a little bit and try to help them out. But Jalen Hurts, man, it's prime McNabb, Cunningham, Michael Vick, off script. This is the quarterback paradigm that the Eagles have had for 30 years, and they don't want to get away from it because they know how valuable it is. And today, where were his best plays, Lou? They were outside of the pocket when things were breaking down.
I think, and again, Saquon Barkley was unbelievable. And this was a true, like, MVP pitch kind of game. Not just because he broke LeSean McCoy's single-season rushing record for an Eagle, 124 yards on 20 carries, had a long of 18 yards today in the second half. But, again, the passing game was inconsistent, and I think Saquon showed that, hey, I am the engine that runs this offense. So I think that was a good pitch for him today. I thought he was exceptional. And, I think they're trying to figure out the passing game inside of structure. So that's why you're seeing the inconsistent commitment to the run at times. But when they dialed it up, it worked every time today.
I think we got to give one guy on offense who I think we've been a little bit hard on, a lot of credit. I think Kenny Gainwell has been a really good football player over the last couple weeks.
Yeah.
Play where Jalen Hurts has that big scramble. Kenny Gainwell has a block that springs Jalen for at least 10 to 15.
He also had a 20-yard run today. He had an explosive of his own.
Johnny Wilson being back and healthy is being huge when it comes to a blocking perspective. I thought CJ Uzama has done a really good job for Ben Van Sumeren since he got hurt. The offensive line allowing 4 sacks was kind of sketchy, but when they take over in the run game, Lou, it's poetry in motion. When Stoutland gets these guys cooking and gets these guys to their landmark, Cam Jurgens, is exceptional, dude. He's so good. Mekhi Becton is going to get a bag. Having Mailata and Lane Johnson back is huge. Not taking stupid penalties today, low-key, underrated, big-time issue that was solved, in my opinion, when it came to the offense. The one thing is still Jalen Hurts taking some sacks, not throwing the ball away.
Yeah.
Outside of that, though, didn't turn the ball over yet again. 8 out of the 9 games since the bye week. This offense has been really good, taking care of the football. The defense, I'm going to say this is a one-off game for them, Lou. I think this was up and down.
It was weird.
They did enough to win. Chuba Hubbard was definitely a tougher test than I thought, but coming off of a week where you had to tackle Derrick Henry, probably a guy who's like 75% of Derrick Henry when it comes to stature, tough physical runner. They did a good job leaning into what they do best.
And they still only allowed 16 points. So, yeah. I mean, I think it's a one-off, too. I'm not concerned about the defense at all, if I'm being honest.
After the first quarter, where they allowed those 7 points. No, they allowed 3 points right away, right? That was the field goal. You did a pretty good job allowing 13 the rest of the game. That's a little over 4 points through 3 quarters. Really good job there. Cooper DeJean got a little welcome to the NFL moment when Adam Thielen cooked him up a couple times.
Thielen had his number today. Yeah.
Zach Bond, exceptional again.
Zach Bond was incredible.
Such a really good
best player on defense today, I think, by a lot. I will say, though, shout out to Darius Slay. I mean, 5 super clutch plays in the fourth quarter.
For this team.
He had 3 big plays on that final drive. Darius Slay coming back from injury. I thought Isaiah Rodgers has held his own over the last few weeks, but Slay's been an underrated good player for this team this year, and I don't think he's getting enough credit. Zach Bond was the best player in defense for the entirety of the game. Darius Slay was the best player when it mattered most.
I think Q, yet again, you didn't hear from him at all. Like, he had a really good game again, dude. He in my opinion, there's some moments, Slay, very clutch today, but there's some moments where you could tell Slay, he's getting over the hump a little bit, like he's a step behind on some of these crossers, and that's okay. Quinyon Mitchell, you don't hear from this guy at all. When they weren't tackling well on the outside, rely on Quinyon Mitchell to be the guy that can step up.
Yeah, when's his welcome to the NFL moment? I mean, Cooper got his today. I don't know if it's coming.
You got to continue to have that guy playing exceptionally well. And in moments today where Bryce Young, he had close to 3 seconds to hold on to the football, Lou, those guys were asked to cover for a long time on the back end. They did allow some longer third down conversions, a couple on fourth down, but contextually on money downs, I thought they did a really good job at the end of the game there. I thought Tristan McCollum, who had to play essentially that whole game at safety, really good job. Avante comes in and had a couple decent plays today.
Fields the punt to pin him back at the 2-yard line.
Dude, this was a game where I think when you go back and look at individual performances, you'll probably see some things that you like a lot more than the entire outcome of this football game. And more of them probably will have to do on the defensive side of the football, because I thought the guys on the interior, Jalen Carter, didn't finish on a lot of the sacks, was a menace. Again, just an absolute chaos maker. Jordan Davis, that play where how big was that play, Lou, where he chases Bryce Young to the sideline? Do you know what happened? The very next play, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson interception. It's 3rd and 3. They have to convert that first down. Instead of it being a first down because Jordan Davis doesn't pursue to the sideline, a guy who's 330 pounds probably has 200 pounds on Bryce Young. Absolutely massive play from him. It's tough to find huge wins when it comes to the overall team perspective, only beating the Panthers by 6 points. But individually, I still think Vic Fangio has his guys in a really good position to succeed. From a run game perspective, they got it going, had enough good plays when it mattered. I don't know. I'm up and down evaluating this game in my head after this.
Yeah, I think tomorrow after rewatching, we'll probably have a different perspective too. But I think overall the defense, they struggle as most defenses do in the scramble drill. A lot of these quarterbacks can run, and it's hard to get them down. I think when you look at the game against Burrow and the Bengals, even Lamar and the Ravens last week, and this one, the only times offenses have really had success creating explosives against this unit. is outside of structure.
Yeah,
so
no, good point. Now that we're breaking it down, it's like
that's really the only
it
time
really took Bryce Young to do some crazy things from a pass.
I think that was both sides. Both quarterbacks had most of their success outside of structure. And then
really
that's
good
just
point there too.
Yeah, that's the modern day NFL for sure. But a win is very important, though. Even though we don't feel great about how they got it, they had to keep pace with Detroit in that race for the 1 seed. We'll get into that coming up next as we recap and wrap up the Locked On Eagles postgame show. 22-16, the final score over the Carolina Panthers. This episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by America's #1 sportsbook, FanDuel. Right now, new customers, you can bet $5 and get $150 back in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. The FanDuel Sportsbook app, they give you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Again, get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. I took the over on Saquon's 110 rushing yards. Nailed that one. Took the over on Jalen Hurts' 39.5 rushing yards. Just bet $5 on one of these Eagles bets. You win, you get $150 back to work with. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, 22-16, the final. The Eagles have won 9 straight games, 11-2. And, Gino, they needed this one. Again,
yeah, man,
you know, I don't always want to say a win is a win, but from a 1 seed perspective, you needed to get this win because Detroit got a big win on Thursday against Green Bay. And if you wanted any chance to still get home field advantage through the NFC playoffs, you had to have this one. Like, this could have almost, I don't want to say ended your pursuit of that top seed, but it would have been pretty tough if you lost this one.
And I'm looking at the game that Detroit played a couple weeks ago on Thanksgiving against Chicago, where talk about luck, man. Like, one of the dumbest sequences you'll ever see with Chicago not being able to score 3 points with 36 seconds on the clock. They could have very easily lost that game, just like the Eagles today. And I think Kansas City could have lost to the Panthers a couple weeks ago. This Panthers team is playing some of the better football that you'll see over the last couple weeks here in the NFL. But for the Eagles' perspective, greater aspirations. And I think that might have been a double-edged sword for them today. That they know what the big games are. They know that that stretch of 3 divisional games after that Pittsburgh game is huge for them. They know that beating Baltimore last week was huge for them in terms of where they stack up with the rest of the competitors in the NFL. That's why I give more credit to those big wins, Lou, than I do to a game where they might have played down to the competition.
Sure.
Has the Eagles in our lifetime ever been a team that like just destroys minnows for fun? Like, they're never outside of 2017.
Did probably 2 seasons, 2017 and 2022, and outside of that,
early 2000s. Like,
Gino, I was watching the end of this game. I'm like, I've watched this game 3,000 times in my life.
Yes, you have been in the Matrix. You've been through the simulation a bunch of times. You shouldn't be shocked that it was this close. Like I said before, Kemsky did that great article breaking down when they are greater than 10-point favorites in games. History isn't always great for them, but to win this game, a win sometimes is a win in the National Football League, Lou. This is huge. You would have liked Green Bay. Every time I root for them, it's like, just win the freaking game. You can't do it.
Yeah.
Would have been nice to see what happened there. But if Jake Elliott isn't a disaster again today, you're probably covering the spread in this game. That's the big.
Yeah, do they have a kicker
question,
problem? I mean, outside of the passing game, is that the biggest question when it comes to like on the field for the Eagles? Is can you trust Jake Elliott to make a kick? I mean, he always used to, like, Gino, sometimes during years where he was inconsistent, he would miss a lot of the short kicks. He would always drill the 50-plus yarders. He's not hitting those this year. I don't know if it's because it's a lack of reps compared to past years, what it is, because they go for it so much. But they have in the past, too. I mean, he's like, his bread and butter are those long kicks, and he's just not coming close. He hasn't hit one.
It's like a golfer where, like Bryson DeChambeau, that weirdo that just like kills the ball 330 yards, and it's like all of a sudden he just like has the yips and he hits it like 100 yards off the tee. It's like, Jake, this is what you do, dude.
There's
like,
a lot of
driver out and smoke these.
There's a lot of kickers right now that are having. I mean, like Justin Tucker, Younghoe Koo from Atlanta. I mean, Jake Elliott, Bass in Buffalo. Like, there's a lot of kickers this year struggling.
Me and my brother-in-law, who's in the Air Force, he's like super analytical. We were talking about this watching a college game where you see a kid kick a 56-yard field. It was the Michigan-Ohio State game. Kid kicks a 56-yarder, bangs it. The other team misses a 33 and a 34-yarder. Somebody has to do a study on kickers right now. This is an all-time disparity between the good ones and the bad ones, between the guys making kicks and not making kicks.
That is true, because the guys that are good this year, they're not missing anything. It's such a high variance. Like
you're either banging every one you kick, or you're bricking 9 out of 10 of them at this point.
There's no in between right now.
It's some weird disparity that they need to figure out. And Jason Peters, they need to give him a 1-day contract to come into that building, put him and Jake Elliott in a corner of that building where the cameras can't see, and let those two guys have a discussion. Because the last time JP said no more misses, Mr. Elliott, that was the Giants game back in 2017 where he really got rolling. They need to have a moment like that, because special teams, that's going to come back to bite you. But at the end of the day, Lou, even when things aren't perfect, this team finds ways to win. And last year, that Seattle game, you're just saying, what if you just won that game? What happens if you win that game against Arizona and you win one more game and maybe you host a playoff game at home? How much different is the outlook of that season? Well, you don't have anybody nipping at your heels in the division right now unless Washington went on some crazy run. But at the same time, you had to keep pace with yourself. You had to know that if we're going to continue to be one of the best teams in the NFL, have a chance to host multiple playoff games, maybe even get a bye, if Detroit slips up, we win this game. We have to win this game. And they did. They found a way to win.
Yeah.
That's what mattered,
big one.
in my opinion. Everybody was looking ahead. I think even us here at Locked On Eagles were like, all right, let's get to this Pittsburgh game.
It feels a lot better to have that win, because you got Pittsburgh and Washington coming up, and those are two tough matchups for sure. So it just adds even more pressure to you if you go into those games at 10-3 right now instead of 11-2. So in that way, in that context, a win is a win, and I'll take that. 11-2, 22-16, the final over the Carolina Panthers. Gino and I, we got stock up, stock down tomorrow to continue to recap this game. 4 more shows for you this week and every week, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. Thanks as always for making Locked On Eagles your first listen and watch each and every day. We're going to sign off for now, though. Thanks as always for tuning into the post-game show, for downloading, watching, and listening, and let's go Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.